special guest with me today on the podcast. Her name is Gail. She is one of my clients, and she has lovingly agreed to share her journey with you to hopefully inspire you on your own journey. Maybe there will be some little tricks or tips that you pick up along the way. So Gail, thank you for being on.
Yeah.
And you did the Keep It Off Academy, and now you've continued coaching with me in the mastermind.
Yep.
Within that 12 weeks of the academy, how did that go for you? Like, what was going on with you before, I guess would be a good starting point that made you want to do it in the first place?
Okay. So before, I've always kind of been on the health conscious side anyways. I mean, even in high school, I had friends that would compete to be under 100 pounds. I was not 100 pounds in high school. Okay. So I was like at 125, and I thought I was fat then because I was like 25 pounds more than them and stuff. So I've always kind of been on the health conscious side. So pop is not part of my diet, things like that. So some of the tricks that people say, well, to drop pop, well, I already dropped pop. I was always on the water. So that didn't necessarily help me. And I've always been very active. So actually, I'm a nurse, and we've been doing a lot of overtime, lots of things to keep me busy. And just over the years, it's kind of just crept up. And it was after COVID started, a year after COVID started, and I had the shot. I didn't feel very good. And it was probably about April. I'm like, I'm not, because the only thing I was wearing was scrubs. Okay. So I had no clue. And I'm like, I almost had to go. I'm like, I don't like how my seat belt is fitting. Oh, what is this? When I'm sitting down, I have a belly. I really am uncomfortable with my skin touching my skin. And I'm like, I got to do something about this. So I started doing things, and then I stepped on the scale probably about 2 months after I did it. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I think I was in denial, okay, on what it said. So I'm like, I really have to do things. I actually was part of the your simplified fat loss piece. I had seen you in things, okay. I had heard your information. I'm like, oh, that sounds good. But then really, I started going into the group, not just seeing what was on my feed. And so I was looking into it a little bit more. So I do a lot of podcasts, but with Facebook, I could just go on to video, and it would go on to the next one while I was driving. So I just was listening to your little pieces along the way. So I started incorporating some of those things. I also tried other things as well, just to get my, because I had no clue.
And you worked with a personal trainer for a minute before the academy, correct?
I did. Okay. I because my husband and I had talked, and he said you should talk to a nutritionist or something like that. So I did. And it wasn't a lot of money either, but it was just a little bit of accountability thing. But it really wasn't what I was looking for. I can stand on a scale at home and get that information, So I was disappointed. Okay. Did I start losing weight? Yes, I did. And started making progress, but I would jump from one thing to another too, and yes, I kept losing, but then after I was losing enough where I could feel it and see it and things like that, you had offered a webinar. I think it was probably your first one that you did. I'm not sure. And it was like in September, and I had a wedding coming up. I had also, it was about 3 months after I had really started losing weight. And that's usually, it was starting to taper off a little bit. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to go back into what I was doing before. And so I watched your webinar, and after the webinar, okay, I said, I'm doing this. I had been to the point, I was at the point where I was fed up. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to get a
No,
little emotional.
that's okay. These stories usually are.
All right. I got up, my feet hurt, my back hurt, and that had been going on for like 2 or 3 years. And despite this, I was exercising. Okay. I was in the gym. I was doing 45 minutes on the elliptical. I was getting my heart rate up. I was doing a lot of things. One of the things I had just made a little mention of it here. But I was I'm a nurse. It's calories in, calories out. So I was really focused on calories in, calories out. But as a nurse, I think too, we're busy, and I tend to, I think, more or less graze. It might have been healthy food, but it was a little bit here, a little bit there, and all that adds up. And it's not necessarily the protein that you need. Okay. So yes, I was picking good choices, but was it necessarily the nutritional piece that I needed to do? So that's one of the biggest, one of the takeaways that I get from starting the program. But anyway, I was to the point where I wanted that accountability, and I saw that, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And the one thing that I even did a personality test yesterday, and I finished what I start. But that was hard too, because, okay, I finished what I was starting, but I'm not 125 pounds. Okay. So I'm doing something wrong. Right. So that kind of makes you feel a little bit down on yourself too. So anyways, that's when I called you, and I knew that I was going to do it. Anyways, it didn't matter what it was. I was going to do the program.
And we've had a lot of fun since you got in the program. So,
oh yeah, lots of fun.
It's interesting because, like, I hope you guys are picking up on a couple of things that Gail said here. So number one is she was already doing things to lose weight, and she was having some success with it, but she knows around that 3-month mark is when she typically falls away, and she didn't want to do that. So that's why she's looking for something else. Plus the weight loss was starting to slow down. So she was already calorie counting. She was already spending 45 minutes a day on the elliptical. These are the things that we tell people to do, right? But there's such a bigger picture to weight loss, especially if you're going to keep the weight off. It can't just be calories in, calories out. A lot of times we might be making healthy food choices, but we're not seeing the big picture of what all goes into nutrition. Gail also alluded to that. So we chatted, you decided to pull the trigger and join the academy. How did it go for you in those 12 weeks that we were in the academy phase?
In the academy phase, you put a lot of information out there. Okay. You're doing a lot with getting into mindset, which is huge. Those pieces I had never done. Yeah. We also do the pieces. Okay. What's the best for you? Is it tracking? Is it measuring? Me, I like to do all the things. I'll have, I got my little notebook started, and I started writing things down too, putting them on paper, not just, I use my fitness pal, but I use that piece of it. I try to use lots of tools, but for something that fits into your life as well, you got to look at that piece. Where were we?
Well, what kind of results did you get while you were in the program?
I am not a person that had big whooshes. Okay. I just don't have the whooshes. But every time I stood on the scale, when I did my weekly averages, I was down. It might be 2 pounds a month. It might be 3-4 pounds a month. It wasn't extremely huge, but it was very consistent. Okay. Even in the program, you're still trying to find out what works best for you. You're still trying to pick pieces out. So it's also a learning phase. So, and just giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
There was.
Yeah. Cause it's like, we're starting
huge.
to play metabolic detective, right? We're like piecing everything together. And you did always have slow, steady weight loss. So for those of you listening that aren't familiar, like, what is she talking about, this whoosh? So everybody loses weight differently. Some people are slow and steady. Some people will get on the scale for a couple of weeks in a row and nothing is happening. And I'm like, just hang with it. Your body's telling us really good things, even though the scale isn't moving. I think you're okay. Just ride it out. And if they trust me long enough to do it for a week or 2 or 3, sometimes they all of a sudden get this big whoosh and a lot of weight drops off the scale all at once. And then it might slow down for a couple of weeks and then whoosh. So that's kind of almost like an inside joke that we have with some of the girls in the program on how differently everybody loses weight. But at the end of the day, you're still taking off the same amount of weight. It's just that everybody's body releases it a little bit differently. So you ended up losing 20 or 25 pounds in those 12 weeks. Is that correct?
A little bit less than that. It'd probably be more like 15 in that piece of it. So,
okay. Because you had lost some before.
Exactly.
Okay. And so what are you down now? Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Gail did the 12-week program. We've continued to do some coaching. She took a little bit of what we call a diet break, where it's more of like a maintenance mode, kind of more intuitive eating. Now she's just getting back to another losing phase, but you're down how much total now?
From standing on a scale, 28 pounds, but I know it was from before then. I was in, I don't want to know phase. So I didn't step on the scale. So I know that I've done pieces there, and I've lost from the time I started measuring, as far as measuring inches and stuff. I just figured that out, 10 inches.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what you're saying is before you started your weight loss altogether, you didn't even get on the scale.
I didn't even get on the scale.
So you're saying it's been more than 28.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then go ahead.
I went from almost wearing extra large scrubs. I was there. Okay. I really probably should have been wearing extra large scrubs, but I didn't want to hit that piece of it, to now I can get into small pants and a medium top.
That's amazing.
Comfortably.
That's amazing. And you've had lots of like non-scale wins. Like you mentioned the seatbelt thing. Tell us about the seatbelt.
Yes. So well, the seatbelt was really one of the biggest things that I get in the car to go to work or wherever I was going. And I didn't want the seatbelt touching my belly. I'm like, my belly was almost sticking up over my top half. And I'm like, I don't like this. And so now I get into the vehicle. I mean, even in my coat. Okay. I notice it in my coat and it feels good. I feel good sitting down. Oh, and I talked about having the pain. It was probably at the end of October. So I've been doing it for about 4 weeks. And it was in the month of November. I was getting up in the morning and I'm like, because I would just anticipate the pain to getting up and making sure that, okay, I don't fall down on the ground when I stand up. And I was having no pain when I was getting up. Just, it was gone. Now, at that point, it probably was only a difference of 10 pounds, but I was like, wow. I couldn't believe the difference in how I felt. Because I mean, it hurt.
It's amazing.
And I'm like thinking.
Yeah, it's amazing how little weight you have to lose to start seeing changes like that.
Yeah. And I'm like, if I'm going to do this at this age, I can't imagine what it's going to be like in 20, getting up every day like this. And I haven't had that at all.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So great results. We're still plugging away. What would you say was different about going through the academy than the things that you had already been trying? You mentioned the mindset pieces. How did your food feel? Like, did you feel restricted? Did this feel like it was more doable for you?
It definitely felt more doable. The big breakthrough is actually being happy about the small breakthroughs, adding up the small pieces of it, the small changes to what you can do, actually putting food back into my diet rather than diet food.
Yeah.
Or protein shakes and stuff like that. Actually putting the food back in and looking at your food. My biggest thing is trying to get the protein. So focusing on that protein piece of it instead of just, oh, well, this is healthy for you. Eat this, eat some carrots. You know what I mean? Instead, make it a more balanced meal there. So being patient and the small things add up to the big things. The book, the Atomic Habits. So it puts a lot of pieces in that. And then I remember talking to you about this on our first phone call, was some of the things that you said were, I had been listening to somebody, Jordan Peterson, and you just picked up all these other pieces. I'm like, huh. Well, that's what I've already been. I mean, I'm listening to this piece of it. Yeah. I mean, and we can make this work for a weight loss, not just life. I mean, you're not going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? But you can strive to be better.
Absolutely.
And even if it's by that 1%. So every day, strive to do something better. Just a little bit.
Yes.
And it's going to add up. It's going to add up. It's better than saying, oh, I'm done. That didn't work. No, you just learned one way not to do it.
And it's better than trying to be so strict that you burn out on it, right? Like, that's something that we see women do all the time, is like go super, super hard because we think weight loss needs to feel a certain way. It needs to feel restricted. Like, you have added back a lot of food since we started. Mm-hmm. You were on a lot of like meal replacement type of things, healthier on the go things. And you had pulled a lot of different foods out of your diet. We've actually given you back a ton of real food and the scale's still going down. So like, that's amazing, right? It's less strict and you're losing. I love it.
And I'm not buying those high dollar, but not that they were all that high dollar, but protein supplements or whatever. So it's using food and figuring out what's better.
Yep. And people think that eating healthy is really expensive. And it's like, if you're buying the quote unquote healthy junk food, then it is, but that stuff's not actually healthy anyways. Right. And so it's not as satisfying as real food. What would you say to anybody who is thinking about the academy, but maybe a little bit reluctant to get started or a little unsure of why this would be different for them?
Okay. Well, number one, you're not going to give them, this is the food to eat. This is all you can eat. You are asking them to get into, for good results, to get into their mindset, to start changing their mindset. So, and you have to do the work. So it's not just you're giving them a whole bunch of information. They really need to work on this. And the one thing about the academy, I think too, is which I think I was more like, oh, what? The Zoom calls, okay, where you get on and there's other people that are in the same boat as you and maybe in different stages, but you have a tribe. You have people. You're not doing this by yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of support.
Exactly. So a lot of support. Now, you need to be invested, but I think too, with you want to make sure that they want to do this, that they're willing to put in the work as well. So they need to be, but you need to have grace wherever you are. 1% better is better than dropping it all.
Yeah, right. It doesn't need to be perfect and you don't have to have it all figured out. That's what we're going to help you do, is figure it out. But definitely it's easier and it's harder, I think, because a lot of it is the mindset pieces, right? And people don't want to do that. It's like, ugh, but that's like where the magic is, right? So it's a little bit more thinking, I would say. But what you actually do is much less torturous than a typical diet. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm sure this is going to inspire lots of lovely ladies to get going, give themselves some grace. I love how much you touched on that. Like, we're all on the same journey. We're just in a different place with it, right? And so meeting yourself where you're at, not trying to bully yourself into it, but doing it from a place of wanting to heal your body, wanting to be healthier, getting rid of aches and pains and stuff like you talked about. I think that that's so important. So I'm really glad that you've gotten that from this experience. So real quick, some things that I hope you picked up on during this conversation was, number one, Gail was already doing all of the quote unquote right things, right? She was doing 45 minutes a day of cardio. She was in a calorie deficit. She was having what she considered to be diet foods and was limiting the foods that she was eating, and which was starting to stall, was starting to get fed up with it, knew that that wasn't sustainable weight loss, right? And so oftentimes those are the things that we try to lose weight. And that is why we end up rebound weight gaining more. So that is a cycle that we have to break. And when you're doing it sustainably, it feels really good. It's actually very fun. As soon as we were done with this interview, Gail actually sent me a message and she's like, hey, something I should have mentioned was that I wasn't waiting for this program to be done. Like, normally when you're on a diet, you're like counting down the days, right? Or you're doing a weight loss program. You're counting down the days until it's over. And she said she didn't want it to end. That's why she wanted to continue coaching, because there's so much work that we can always be doing on our habits and becoming a better version of ourselves. And so I thought that was a really cool thing. And I hear that often from women who are losing weight sustainably. They're like, yeah, this is just what I do now. It feels really good. I couldn't possibly go back to what I was doing before, to the strict dieting, or just not even paying any attention to my body now that I know how good my body can feel and that I don't have to torture myself to get there. So thank you for listening in. If this is something that interests you and you want more free information, you want in on some of the webinars that I do or the 5-day challenges, those are all free resources. And the best way to stay plugged in and know when those are happening is to hop in that Simplified Fat Loss Facebook group. So if you're not in there yet, I would suggest that you join us. We'd love to have you there. I will put a link to that in the show notes. And of course, if you are ready to take the plunge or you just want to know more about what this academy is all about, how does it operate, and see if it would be a good fit, I will also put a link to my calendar in the show notes so you can schedule time for us to chat, dig into your goals, see what's working for you and what's not. Maybe you haven't started doing anything yet, and that's okay too. A lot of the women that I work with aren't, because they're confused about where to start. So everybody's in a different starting place, and that is okay. But I hope to see you either in the Facebook group or to see your name pop up on my calendar. Thanks for tuning in. It is my mission to give women back the confidence that they need to show up bigger in their lives. Right now, the world more than ever needs women who are on fire and living their purpose. If you want to join me in this mission, there's a few things you can do. 1, you can share this podcast with the women in your circle. 2, you can join me in my Facebook group, Simplified Fat Loss, or you can subscribe to my newsletter at nikkioday.com.